The question of where black people come from, according to the Bible, has intrigued scholars, theologians, and everyday believers for generations. Far from being silent on the matter, Scripture provides direct genealogical links that trace the roots of African peoples back to one of the most pivotal figures after the flood, Ham, one of Noah's 3 sons. According to Genesis, all people on earth today are descendants of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem is traditionally considered the ancestor of Middle Eastern peoples, including the Jews and Arabs. Japheth is linked to European and parts of Asian populations. But Ham is consistently associated with Africa and dark-skinned peoples. Chapter 1. The meaning of Ham's name and his connection to Africa. The name Ham itself carries significant meaning. In Hebrew and other Semitic languages, the root of Ham is connected to words meaning hot, burnt, or black. This linguistic association has long been used to suggest that Ham was the ancestor of dark-skinned people and the father of many African civilizations. In Psalm 105 and 106, Egypt is referred to as the land of Ham, further reinforcing this connection. Other ancient Jewish writings and traditions consistently portray Ham and his descendants as the forebears of African nations. Chapter 2. Ham's sons, the founders of African civilizations. Genesis 10 outlines the genealogy of Ham. His sons were Kush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Each of these sons became the progenitor of a different people group, many of whom settled in Africa and its surrounding regions. Kush is most often associated with the regions of modern-day Sudan and Ethiopia. The ancient kingdom of Kush was a real historical civilization located in the Upper Nile Valley, and it played a significant role in the cultural and political life of ancient Africa. Mizraim is the biblical name for Egypt. Even today in modern Hebrew and Arabic, Egypt is called Mitzrayim, or Misr. This reinforces the claim that Mizraim is the father of the Egyptians and possibly other North African peoples. Put is believed to be the ancestor of early Libyan tribes and other African groups west of Egypt. Some traditions also associate Put with regions farther south in Africa. Canaan, although geographically situated in what is now the Middle East, was still one of Ham's sons. His descendants eventually became the Canaanites, but this line is more notable for its biblical controversy than its geographic origin. Chapter 3. The misinterpreted curse of Ham. One of the most damaging misreadings of Scripture is the so-called curse of Ham. But let's be clear, the Bible never says Ham was cursed. The curse was placed on Canaan, Ham's son, not on Ham himself or on all his descendants. According to Genesis 9, after the flood, Noah became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. Ham saw his father's nakedness and told his brothers, who then respectfully covered Noah. When Noah woke and realized what had happened, he cursed Canaan, not Ham, saying that Canaan would serve his brothers. This passage has been tragically misused throughout history to justify slavery and racism. But in truth, the curse was never racial, nor was it directed at all of Ham's lineage. The Bible does not support the idea that black people were cursed. That interpretation is not only incorrect, it's harmful and unjust. Chapter 4. Kush and the Spread of African Nations. The descendants of Kush, Ham's eldest son, spread across much of northeastern Africa. Ethiopia, historically referred to as Kush in the Bible, became one of the most prominent nations to carry on this legacy. The ancient Nubians, closely related to the Kushites, also descended from this line. Kush's influence didn't stop in Africa. Some traditions claim that his descendants traveled farther east and settled in parts of South Asia, including southern India and Sri Lanka. Genetic and cultural studies have shown potential links between East African populations and the Dravidian peoples of India, though this remains a topic of scholarly debate. Some historical interpretations even suggest that Nimrod, a mighty warrior and ruler, was a descendant of Kush. He went on to build powerful cities like Babylon and Nineveh, two of the most influential centers in early Mesopotamian civilization. Chapter 5. Mizraim and the Egyptian Legacy. Mizraim, another of Ham's sons, is directly connected to Egypt. The ancient Egyptians were a dark-skinned African people with a civilization so advanced that its impact is still felt today. From architecture and medicine to mathematics and religion, Egypt was a global center of knowledge and power. The Bible confirms that Egypt was one of the key nations to emerge from Ham's lineage. In Psalm 78, verse 51, Egypt is again called the tents of Ham. This reinforces the ancestral link between Mizraim and the African civilization that flourished along the Nile. Chapter 6. Put and the Libyan Connection. Though less is known about Put, biblical and extra-biblical sources suggest he was the father of African tribes located west of Egypt, likely in the region we now call Libya. Ancient historians like Josephus also associate Put with the inhabitants of North Africa. Some African groups, such as the Berbers and early Saharan tribes, may trace their roots back to Put. These groups contributed to trans-Saharan trade, culture, and even early Islamic scholarship in later centuries. Chapter 7. The Book of Jubilees and Extra-Biblical Insight. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text once held in high regard, provides further information about Ham's descendants. It describes tensions that arose when Ham's son Canaan attempted to settle in territory designated for Shem's descendants, what we now call Israel. According to this text, Ham and his other sons objected, believing that Canaan's rightful inheritance lay in Africa. The Book of Jubilees also states that Ham was the first to establish a city after the flood. He named it Ma'el-Tok, in honor of his wife. Though this book is not part of the canonical Bible, it reflects ancient Jewish beliefs and gives further depth to the narrative found in Genesis. Chapter 8. Where was Ham buried? The final resting place of Ham remains uncertain, but several traditions place his tomb in Africa. Some believe he was buried in Sudan, Ethiopia, or possibly even Egypt, three lands strongly linked to his legacy. Other sources suggest Mesopotamia, though this is less commonly accepted. Regardless of where Ham's body lies, his legacy lives on through the millions of people descended from his sons, Kush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Chapter 9. A broader view of African heritage. It's essential to understand that while the Bible offers a foundational narrative, it's not the only source of African history. Modern historians, archaeologists, linguists, and geneticists contribute valuable insights that confirm, expand, or sometimes challenge biblical interpretations. From oral traditions passed down through generations to archaeological discoveries in Ethiopia, Mali, and Egypt, the story of African peoples is rich and multidimensional. The biblical account is one thread in a much larger tapestry. Final thoughts. The biblical origin of Black and African peoples, rooted in the story of Ham and his descendants, should be seen as a testimony to dignity, strength, and continuity, not as a source of shame or false inferiority. Misinterpretations of Scripture have caused real harm, but truth brings healing and restoration. By revisiting these ancient texts with context and clarity, we can better appreciate the extraordinary legacy of African peoples, both biblically and historically.